Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by Philip Lee, one of Ireland's fastest growing corporate law firms and expert advisors at the heart of the Dublin and London startup, fintech, and crypto communities. This week, we've got a special Money Talk segment recorded during the second edition of the Finsight series virtual event that I moderated recently, hosted by Navirum and Salesforce. In this conversation, we've got an all-star cast with Rory Galvin from Navirum, Kerry Ryan from Salesforce, Christian Maynard Phillip from Pattern Financial, and Joe Parkin from BlackRock. The key idea with this discussion is that so many pieces of the wealth management process have become digital, but many have not. How do we go beyond WealthTech to accelerate to the next level of truly digital wealth management? Or do we need to? The stellar crew share a lot more insights and stories as well, all right here on Money Never Sleeps. Hey everyone, this is Pete. As happens from time to time, recordings don't always work out the way you want them to. So we've remastered this discussion with some intros we did after the original webinar. Just to provide some background, in the first edition of the Finsight series, we took a broad look at how financial services upstream of consumer finance were either becoming digital or were challenged to become digital, in particular with wealth management and institutional banking. In the second edition we packaged into this episode, we took a deeper look at wealth management and exactly how far we can digitalize it, keeping in mind that widely different demographics are driving the demand for both the continuation of conventional people-oriented solutions and also the scaling of technology-driven solutions. So let's get into the intros. Joe, how about you? How about you give us a little intro, yeah?
Thanks, Pete. Absolutely delighted to be here. My name's Joe Parkin, and I run our banks and digital business at BlackRock. BlackRock's one of the world's largest asset managers and provides technology and investment solutions to clients across the globe with a mission of delivering financial well-being to our clients. My job on a day-to-day basis, I spend a lot of time helping clients across banking and digital channels, businesses, building better investment and technology solutions so they can power their clients more fulfilling and better financial outcomes in the very long term.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Kerry?
Good afternoon. I'm Kerry Ryan, Industries Marketing for Financial Services at Salesforce. In my role, I work with sales, product, and innovation teams to develop marketing programs that support the digital transformation and business growth of both wealth and asset management firms globally.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kerry. Rory, over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rory Galvin. I'm the CEO and founder of Navirum. We're a financial services consulting company and a Salesforce registered partner. So delighted to meet everyone today and share some ideas on the future of wealth management and how technology is enabling companies to become more competitive and more disruptive in the post-COVID world.
Excellent. Thanks, Rory. Also joining us on this episode is Christian Maynard Phillip, founder and CEO of Pattern Financial. Pattern is a new type of robo-advisor with a human layer, and they're launching in summer 2022. Before founding Pattern, Christian was a chief compliance officer of Cash App Investing with Square and was also in leadership roles with Acorns and Vault Investing in the U.S. From here, we'll roll right into the discussion, opening with my question to Joe Parkin from BlackRock. Joe, when you and I caught up last week, you said that it's never been about digital or human. You gave me a good quote from the book Good to Great. Can you maybe share that and perhaps link it back to the higher level theme of a hybrid approach here to wealth management?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who haven't read, Good to Great by Jim Collins, absolutely worth a read. But as part of that, he says technology cannot cause greatness. It can only accelerate or accentuate it. And I think that just, to me, kind of sums up where we're at in many areas of kind of wealth management, today, where really technology it's looking at how do we build better portfolios. It's looking at how do we scale advice and advisors. It's looking at how do we reach more clients. And then it's also looking at all the data and operational kind of efficiencies that exist behind the industry. I think it's really important to realize that in the context of this question, I think there are going to be some services and some cohorts of clients doing a certain area of wealth management that are going to be able to do it completely digitally. So if I think about opening my first investment account, I'm 25 years old. I know I need to start saving for a house. How do I do it? Or I've been talking to friends or whatever. I'm going to do that almost completely digitally. If I then move to a situation where I'm starting to think about retirement, or I'm starting to think about, how do I put aside money for my children, or what's the most effective way to inheritance tax, then it doesn't mean I don't need a digital interface. And it also doesn't mean, by the way, that I shouldn't Like my advisor shouldn't be able to triage me and get all the information he needs digitally. But it's going to absolutely need a bit of a hybrid approach. So I think at the moment, and we're getting better at it, but at the moment you're either a robo or you're kind of a traditional wealth manager, and nothing's really met in the middle. Now, of course, there are examples in the US, highly successful as examples in the US where this has worked, and you have combined together that sort of hybrid approach, which I think is super important. But I think like the medical industry is starting to get this really right, which is, and I think we should think about it the same way within the wealth management space. An advisor or a banker or whatever you want to call it is that doctor, and we really there's only a limited number of those. We don't want to, every time you got a cough or whatever, we don't want to put you straight in front of one. But how do we use data to better triage and then deploy the specialists at the point of necessity, not just all the way throughout? And I think then we can start to create better outcomes for clients, better outcomes for the people serving those clients, and just a better all-round experience. So, for me and my perspective, like it's about how do you deploy that to the right segment at the right time.
I'm with you. With you. Getting that balance right, again, like we said, is absolutely critical. And I think that, getting better with digital overall may be this realization that a human solution is sometimes the better solution. But we might not be able to digitalize everything. There are things that are just not meant to be digitalized, even the handshake. And, hopefully the days of elbow bumps and, fist bumps are well, depending upon your own personal choice, obviously.
And Pete, I think what we've done previously, right, we try to digitalize the person, which is completely the wrong way to look at it, right? Like you can't digitalize the person. What you've got to do is use technology in order to help that particular person, which I think is the key element.
Yeah, I saw today in your neck of the woods, Joe, St. James Place Wealth just announced, I think, 200 virtual reality headsets, Oculus Quest headsets that they were deploying to their staff for training and and with these virtual customers and teaching them how to actually engage with customers in the virtual world. And that obviously turning that into some feedback for these wealth advisors. So taking things to the next level with digital, obviously being a good example there. What I'm thinking of though, with looking at, like I said, not being able to digitalize everything, there's still going to be better ways to leverage technology. Like I just mentioned, these VR headsets, but that's not always going to be the answer. There's going to be a whole heck of a lot of people and demographics that Rory, you and I spoke about the first time that would be like, hey, no, sorry, I'm not wearing a headset. Just go away. Right. There are better ways to leverage tech for what we can do. Carrie, swinging it to you, do you have any examples of how one of your Salesforce Wealth Manager clients leverage technology to improve their overall service?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that we're seeing with a number of our leading customers is, thinking about the service dimension and I guess throwing it back to data, right? And leveraging our capabilities with Tableau, which is of course now part of the Salesforce portfolio. And we've seen a number of wealth management firms around the globe really leveraging Tableau CRM as a way to deliver a better service experience. Within the product, we have a next best action piece of functionality, which we hear from our customers is really helpful in terms of delivering a best in class service experience, really knowing who to call or when to contact someone with what kind of information and what kind of context wrapped around it. So I think, we think about that theme of service, but really delivering it in a way that's very relevant, very personalized. I think that comes up as, the strongest use case that we see from our large and our mid-size wealth management customers on bringing our capabilities and leveraging it for the benefit of their advisors and ultimately their clients. I would say also too, threading on that use of data as well is that, as we think about that service dimension too, is, how can data be used as an asset for someone who's leading a team of advisors or a branch manager, and that's been an area of focus for us as well. We've had a number of our customers leverage our technology to really identify what they see as best in class trends from a practice management point of view, which, would include service, right? And saying, okay, wait, this approach is really working well. How do I scale that out to other advisors as part of my team as well? So we can improve the service experience that we're delivering our clients as well. And then I think about, kind of where the future is headed, thinking about a service, modern collaboration from my perspective really sits front and center of all of that, right? We are thinking about kind of new ways of working, thinking about new ways of delivering that great service experience. So, certainly for us at Salesforce, bringing in Slack to really help elevate what we've already built on our service technologies as well. We're seeing really great success there as firms are saying, wait, we've got to collaborate with each other across offices, across teams, across regions in different ways to really deliver a better service experience. And I think what we're seeing is that is being really helpful. Again, going back to that theme of connecting front, middle, back office, because I think service is an area where I think traditionally the advisor and maybe their initial support team was delivering all the service. And what we're seeing from our customers is that they're saying, can we have a bigger, broader solution? Because we need to have more people rallied around delivering and supporting service so that the advisors can spend more time on those higher value activities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And fueling that with data, and that when you've got a bigger organization focused on delivering wealth management services, that you're going to have more technology, you're going to have more infrastructure there, more tools for the wealth advisors to use. And like I said, more data coming into that. And that data then fuels the analytics that lets you think, how are we providing the service? What are the things we're not thinking about yet? And the data can help to point those things out. Christian, just thinking about how you began with a blank slate to try to address some of this, and on the whole topic of getting better with digital, but still in getting that right balance between the digital and the human in wealth management, with what you're doing with Pattern. How have you approached being best in class for the parts of the Pattern value proposition that are tech led, such as the robo advisor component? How have you approached that?
Yeah, great question. So I would say I kind of have a unique perspective because I started out in traditional wealth management and moved to the robo dark side. And I would say that, one thing in kind of thinking about this first generation of robo advising and where it's going and where we need to improve to really be a great steward of folks' finances, especially people that maybe have more than a couple $100 account, is that we really need to get the human element right. So for instance, I think something that we commonly hear when we're interviewing folks is that it's impossible to get a hold of anyone when you're trying to do anything on a robo advisor. And really, kind of, I would say meeting that piece and building trust amongst kind of this new kind of robo advising generation. Because if we don't get that trust piece right, we won't be able to be a good steward of folks' finances and really build the next, hopefully, generation of robo advising products. So I would say getting that piece really right is really one of our biggest focus areas. And it's not really sexy, but I mean, people really build trust with their clients. And it's an element that we need to get right as we scale technology as well.
Okay. Interesting. And just thinking about some of the services beyond the core investments function, Rory, to get your insights on this, do you think the degree to which a wealth manager specializes in a specific area? Obviously, you'd like all of them to be able to do investments, insurance, tax, and estate planning. But do you think the degree that they specialize determines whether they're more digital or they're more human in what they deliver right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Pete. If you're a wealth manager, I mean, it depends on what end of the spectrum you're on. Like, you have to kind of understand that, like, for a lot of, the smaller, medium-sized wealth managers, they have this very personal relationship with their clients that's a bit like akin to like a doctor or a physician. They know everything about their family. They know everything about the generations before them. And it's not like they're, slinging, whatever comes along. It becomes the solutions that they build for their clients emerges after years of these relationships. This is at one end of the spectrum anyway. So I think they may specialize in investments, for example, but then they might have like a stable of people they referred them to for tax purposes or for insurance. I think generally they do tend to specialize. The majority specialize in managing portfolios. And then they kind of tend to refer that on, the rest of that work, to other areas because the mechanics of it is just too complex for a smaller organization to deal with. So I think that creates an opportunity then at the other end of the spectrum for robo advisors. And you're seeing a lot more of them that are sort of doing wealth management, but they're starting to add on tax services. They're starting to add on insurance. And they're starting to add on all these other services that, traditional wealth managers struggle to scale. So I think technology is a huge enabler there of that, creating greater share of wallet, as it were, for those robo advisors. So that would be my perspective on it.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, and I think you've pointed out to me in the past, Rory, in some of our separate chats, that it's really about getting to know your customers, and that if you have an area that you specialize in, and that happens to be something that requires a lot more offline work, such as the tax planning, estate planning, then you're going to be a more human delivered service by nature, and adapting that to the digital world now is pretty important. Joe, you and I talked about the lengths to which a wealth manager may go to learn about their customers, such as, perhaps aping in on their Facebook or Instagram profiles. What do you think might be a more effective way to do this? I mean, you mentioned some other things about open banking before that I thought were interesting. to get to know your customers?
Yeah. So I think, like the direction of travel here is to have ambient, seamless financial services that sit across all the different sort of pillars that exist, right? And I think for too long, financial services are sat in a kind of, is it banking? Is it wealth? Is it retirement? Is it insurance? Type of conversation. I think the winners, and I don't think it's very far off, the winners over the next 3 to 5 years are going to be the guys that can actually pull themselves above those and then start to use all the data that comes into them to actually nudge the client into a direction of travel that makes sense for that particular client. So it's very hard, I think, to really understand or provide advice from a robo-advisor's perspective, because actually they have no idea of the bank account, how much money they have at the end of every month. Are they insured? Do they have a retirement pot, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we need to put it up a level. I think the idea of this wealth hub, which kind of sucks everything in and then starts to, truly advise the client, but the data has to be there, right? The data is going to be the absolute critical part of it. And so you start to get a holistic view of kind of your financial services to the ecosystem. And rather than having like a spreadsheet like you used to, 5 or 10 years ago, versus now where you've got a load of apps that do it, actually having one place where you can go to that understands you, that, has all the accounts feeding in that you have in the various different parts of your life, to me is going to be like the utopia that everyone wants to see, because it'll be easy. And while it'll be complicated underneath, it'll be easy for the consumer to use. And that's ultimately what we want to achieve, right? We want to achieve that.
Hey everyone, this is Pete. Let me tell you about the folks at Philip Lee. A few years ago, I was at my first venture capital industry dinner in Dublin, and honestly, I felt a bit lost. I bumped into Andrew Tizali, one of the partners at Philip Lee. He bought me a pint and introduced me to the team, and they took me under their wing. That take you under their wing approach has been what I've heard consistently from fintech and crypto startups who I know have worked with Philip Lee in Dublin and London to help them wrap the right legal framework around their business, fundraising, and regulatory needs. And I can't recommend them enough. Get in touch with the team at philiplee.ie or on moneyneversleeps.ie/Philip Lee to learn more. Going beyond WealthTech, guys, we're all kind of saying that we can do as much as we want on the data side, but that the human element is irreplaceable. What's the next step, right? Where do we go from here with wealth management? And I talked about St. James Place and, rolling out the VR headsets to their teams for training purposes, but will that actually become using VR headsets to engage with people, engage with customers, clients digitally? I think that is, perhaps on the horizon. I think the bigger rhetorical question is, will there always be a human element, even when we're all, like in the book Ready Player One, in the year 2045, spending all of our free time in a virtual reality world called the Oasis. Okay. I think that naturally, if you are going to be in a virtual reality world, you do need the headset and you will need the goggles. But I think there's some interesting bridges to that we'll talk about in a minute. But Christian, what do you think that next version of engagement actually looks like? Is it this VR themed relationship between advisors and customers, or is that just one bridge too far?
Okay, so I think I'm going to surprise everyone with my answer. So we did a ton of research because, building that financial advising muscle in-house on top of that software level, that's like our biggest struggle. How do we get that really right and that customer experience really right, where people still feel like their needs are being met if they have more than, $500,000 of investable assets with us? And very interestingly, we asked people, again, kind of those thousands of folks, do you want to have a call? Would you like to come in? What does that experience look like? And overwhelmingly, I think it was 78% of respondents in our target market. They actually only wanted to be able to message or text folks through the app. They didn't want calls. They didn't want Calendly links. That was actually a major kind of point of friction. They wanted on demand. I want to be able to text this person immediately. And when I go back into my phone in an hour, see a response. So I actually don't see that as becoming, and we'll see, right? Sometimes the data is very different than when you're live and you're actually having interactions with folks. It's actually like, wait, I really want this. I just didn't know how to articulate it. So I think that actually looks like taking a step back, and it looks like an all digital kind of messaging platform, at least for now.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I mean, we don't have to go fully digital if people aren't ready for it. Right. And that I talk to my wealth advisor a couple times a year. I actually just emailed them this morning on something that I needed his help with. And he responded by email and he helped me by email. And that worked just fine. And if he was, although he hates crypto and he points that out to me from time to time, you know, it's something where depending upon the level of engagement you have with your wealth advisor, there's going to be ways that are just easier to do things. Carrie, Rory, Joe, just maybe all chime in here. What are some of the things that you're seeing in the market, either on the human side or on the digital side, that you think are the more innovative types of solutions that are coming to market, or just habits or good practices that you're seeing wealth managers do in the space?
Yeah, look, I think the virtual way of, engaging is here to stay, but I do think there is a need for that human connection. I think what we've been seeing, with the customers that we've been working with is that the relationship between the firm, the advisor, and ultimately the client has become much more personal through this, unprecedented time in terms of, clients going to their advisors with very personal needs, from how do I help my elderly parents? How do I might have a job loss in my household. How do I navigate through that? Certainly thinking about I think a deeper array of very personal issues has really come to the fold. And I think digital can't be the replacement for that, right? So I think that that human level of dialogue is just going to deepen. And I think it's actually been enabled because there's so much digital capabilities. So those easy to answer questions that you might have had to go to an advisor for in the past get self-service through a digital channel. And therefore, you're then engaging with your advisor in a deeper, richer, more emotional way than ever before. Because I think money and financial matters are very personal, lots of complexity associated with them. So I think advisors who can really embrace that new way of supporting their clients, I think they're going to come up ahead.
Absolutely. I hear you. Joe or Rory, any insights on that?
Well, I mean, I think, just to kind of add to, Kerry's point there, like, I mean, and Christian's point, I think there's two things. It just depends on your market. Our experience is it just depends on who you're dealing with, because there's a certain segment of the market that only want to do text message. They only want to do WhatsApp. And there's others who want to meet face to face. And really, it's like online banking. Like, it's just like, there's still, it's people who are more comfortable with engaging online with services than going to meet that person face to face. So I think that, like, wealth managers need to think about who their market is, and they need to think about how they engage with those clients, based on what the consumers actually want. I think there are concepts and themes right now around building a digital HQ, which, I think is a really interesting idea within wealth managers, where they're not so much focused on, building this physical HQ. It's like how they can build their own services around this digital HQ in their company. I think that is an area that we're talking to a lot of clients about, around how they can communicate, how they can share information in this digital world. Because before, it used to be over a water cooler or a cup of coffee, but now you've got these blockages of information flowing within organizations. So creating a digital HQ creates that free flow. So that's an area of innovation that doesn't involve, getting your VR headset on, but you can really improve the communication within companies. So that's a concept. But I think the St. James's Place idea around the Oculus headsets is really, really interesting. And I think that they're obviously very, very well known in the UK market and beyond. So I think you're going to see more of that, but then you need to have somebody perhaps at the other end, who's engaged in that experience as well. They're consumers, they're clients. So, and that's going to be, again, a certain segment of the market that's going to respond to that. So,
okay. And Joe, what are you seeing? St. James Place is right there in your backyard, but what are some of the other things you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, listen, so COVID was a horrendous situation for many, but actually from a digital wealth management perspective, or just from financial services, personal financial services, it's probably like moved the industry forward faster than it ever would have done, which I think is a hugely, kind of silver lining out of what was a pretty awful time for people. So I think we have to build on that. I think there are several things. The first thing is we have to actually properly work out how we engage people. And I think we've been really bad in wealth management about doing this. The analogy I always give is the car. The engine of the car is the most important part, i.e. the investment product that powers, what you do. But people don't go and buy engines, they go and buy cars. And so I think that's really important. We need to move away from focusing too much on the investments and focus on the customer and his outcome and that sort of stuff. I think we can learn a lot from other industries about how this works, and you think about, how many of the apps that you see in financial services are like truly compete with some of the other apps that you spend more and more time on. I think the other item is just personalization. And I think that will come when we get data. But, if you think about your interactions as well with many other brands that you do on a day-to-day basis, it kind of knows who you are, and it knows what you want to see or listen to, or, go on holiday or wherever it may be. So like, I think there's like, it's stepped forward quite a long way, but I still think there's more to do around that, which I think is like the next step in the evolution, right? So I just urge people not to rest on their laurels off the back of, the COVID crisis, but actually to continue to push forward, because otherwise I think there will be this situation where you've got traditional firms that, kind of like didn't move quickly enough, and the incumbents, and new firms that come in, who really have got it, really have got how you operate in a, in a modern world.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. And I could go on and on that topic, and, where things are headed for the next 10 years. And we'll come back to that. But this was just a conversation I was having with someone yesterday on the insurance side, and saying that I'm seeing already smart contract led insurance policies in crypto, and seeing your holdings insured, obviously, and being done without an intermediary involved. And also seeing in another segment of crypto, real world assets backing some liquidity pools. And I won't get too technical or complicated into any of this, because I know a lot of this goes right over people's head, but being able to bring things such as consumer credit, bring things such as invoices and discounting invoices and real estate securitization, and bring all that into these decentralized finance environment, and how quickly that space can move, and seeing some of the players that may need to catch up to that. I don't think, some may be able to, but not everybody will. But I think we have enough of a demographic split on the types of things that I'm talking about that people may not be that comfortable with, right? And completely letting go. I am comfortable with completely letting go, but not everybody is. And I think we have enough of a demographic split for this to have a long arc of transformation here to how people engage with their own wealth. Think about the virtual reality experience. I think there are some steps along the way to get to that path. All of us here are engaging right now via Zoom. I think we're only at the very beginnings of how that can change, in that we see filters on Zoom right now. This is a blur of a digital background. Why can't that be a screen that comes up that my financial advisor puts up in front of me, that we both can look at, that sees a graph in real time of how my financial situation would change if I retired at the age of 58 rather than 62, right? Or whatever the case may be. And being able to engage with some of these augmented reality type scenarios. I think that's something interesting to watch, and that I'd like to see some providers get their heads around. With that, we've got a couple of good questions that came up from the crowd that I just wanted to see if we could address here. The first one being from Peter Gorel. So he is on his second generation wealth advisor, the son of the guy that he worked with for over 30 years and have managed everything online for the past 5 years. His trust was built with his dad, and he simply carries the torch despite technology managing the data. How do we get the boomers to be comfortable with that? Right. I think it's, I was talking to someone yesterday who came and bought a stereo that I was getting rid of in his house. And I said, listen, I'll pay you over Revolut. He's like, I can't do that. And, there's, and it's something that is so easy. It doesn't even have the Revolut app, which is absolutely fine. So people choose not to do that. But the situation Peter's talking about is having that trust built with a wealth advisor and keeps things going, even though technology is behind the scenes. Any thoughts on how we might get that demographic, the one beyond Gen X, comfortable with all this? Any views on that?
I think just show them value, right? Stop trying to show that, sometimes I think we think about too much. Like, we think about the VR headset that you send to the baby boomers who said, this is too much, it's too far. Yeah. I just make it easy for them. Like, the ability for them to book review meetings via an email portal that then automatically sends them a Zoom, like that sort of thing, where they don't need to then travel to a wealth manager's office, or, they're used to doing Zoom. They're used to doing that sort of stuff. So I think bringing it about slowly, is kind of super important. Like, how do we use open finance to help them with their tax returns? Like, all that sort of stuff is going to be really, really important for them, rather than I don't know, often I think, some of the conversations we can have go way too far. And it's actually the utility of helping with a real problem, a job to be done, right?
Yep.
I think as well, a really big part of is training and education. I can't underestimate. I think a lot of companies really underestimate the fear, or that people have around using technology. And I think there's this assumption that everyone can just pop a headset on and log into this and use that. But probably about like 80-90% of consumers are afraid of
Yeah.
technology. It's not that they don't want to use it, it's just they don't know how. And maybe they're a bit embarrassed, or they've heard some stories from their peers about difficult situations. So I think really, to create a great experience, it's about that full customer life cycle. And that starts off with education. And then once they know the practicalities of driving a car, then they can step into it and start driving it. So I think education is critical. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Got another question here for Christian. For the clients that you talked about that were messaging only, what are some of the best practices you're seeing from the technology side to enable that?
Okay, I might need help with this. So I think what this person is asking is, are there good tools for financial advisors to use to enable this right now? And actually, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, because I'm more inclined on the building apps and enabling it from kind of one software perspective for patterns. So does anyone have great tools or that they would recommend for messaging?
Oh,
I mean, I'm certainly happy to jump in, certainly as part of the portfolio of capabilities that we have, just in terms of messaging, we've seen a number of our wealth management customers leverage the capabilities of Marketing Cloud, which provide, very well branded messaging tracks across, email, websites, and social to really help advisors deliver really great, brand compliant as well as regulation compliant experiences really across all those channels. I think also we see, a lot of value. We integrate with a lot of content providers into our ecosystem. So that coupled together, I think that's always the challenge too. As for any advisors, they want to have a steady stream of valuable information going out to their clients and prospects. So that's an important part of how we integrate with a number of news providers and other content sources as well to bring that all to bear.
I gotcha. Makes sense. That makes sense. And there's a couple of folks out there that I know that are doing a really good job of looking at this cross-channel communication that you have with customers and saying that from a compliance perspective, every communication you have needs to be tracked. So you can't just have wealth advisors randomly going off and WhatsApping everybody unless we have some way to track that. And that can be contained. So that's definitely something to think about. Another question from John Feinstein here. We're seeing some sub-verticals within the wealth management space, such as those aligned with insurance companies or banks. They want to continue to extend certain in-person ceremonies or activities. As a result, there needs to be a strategy and a sensitivity to developing technology that also supports a hybrid approach. For example, in Ireland, there is still a requirement for a trust document, for anything that would constitute a trust, to be signed in wet ink, right? And that is a in-person ceremony. There are also in-person ceremonies in crypto custody for people to have their private key generated and then stored away in cold storage, right? So we're not completely there yet. So, any thoughts or insights on having a technology that also supports this type of hybrid approach where you can have these physical world requirements still fulfilled?
I mean, most of them, I can see the wet signature piece being the major one, right? But I think, if there were any, COVID generally tried to, get rid of them. Otherwise, it was almost impossible to do anything in that environment. There's some stuff that exists in the asset management industry around two signatures for various different things. Like there is some stuff, right? But I think, generally speaking, there's not too many barriers to entry now in and around this stuff. And if there is, like, the regulator seems, pretty keen that as long as it's done in a safe and secure way, that they will kind of allow or find a route around it. So I think if that's the question,
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem for me, potentially, right, is there's no one size fits all for what people are trying to do with their businesses, right? And so that's where I think it's really important to have kind of agile tech. You can't be trying to be a really interesting consumer digital robo advisor play if your core banking systems are 60 years old. So I think you've got to get everything in order and in place to allow for, for example, if you need certain type of, automated signatures, there's lots of things that can do that. You just need to be able to make sure you interact with it and bring it into the right part of your business. And you can't do that if you're not working on, technology that can deliver that.
Absolutely. I hear you. I think we're going to move to one more question there on regulation, but given that we're nearly out of time here, and we did have Lewis who gave us a very good summary of everything. And at the end of that summary that he's kindly provided, he's also given us one last question, which is nearly exactly the same as my final question for all of you. So I will just paraphrase that all together and say that what's the one thing from each one of your kind of favorite areas of wealth management that you would like to see go digital, within the next year to 18 months?
I'll go first. Bring what's happening in open banking into the rest of financial services.
Absolutely. Open finance. I'm with you. Rory, do you want to go?
Oh, I mean, it's always a challenging question. I think that I don't think there is particularly a quick win. I think, I think something I said before was about, maybe it involves a headset stepping into their future selves to understand where they'll be in, 10 to 20 years time, their financial reality, like financial time machine. Maybe that could be done, using some of the technologies we mentioned today. But I think that there's like a root and branch change needed in a lot of these sort of, smaller companies, to become more digital, to deliver that experience. We've mentioned Wealthfront before and Wealthsimple and these types of companies that are just delivering, amazing digital experiences through apps and stuff like that. So, I think a quick win could actually be combining the robo-advisor technology platforms with that traditional approach, and I think offering that to clients. So I think maybe Christian, you could probably add something to that.
Yes. So we're pre-launch. So I'd like to see Pattern launch. That's my biased answer.
Okay. So that is one thing to move this industry more quickly is Pattern getting launched.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. I'm with you. Carrie, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I'm going to thread back to my earlier comment. I'd love to see front, middle, and back office business processes become fully digitized. I think, look, it's important to have all these great innovations, slick interfaces, great portals. But at the end of the day, if there's a lot of manual processes happening behind the scenes, it's going to compromise the experience. It's actually going to challenge the industry in terms of recruiting that next generation of talent that we so desperately need to have really coming into the space. So future of work is here.
That's a great point, Carrie. I mean, in bringing people in that are providing these services, you want to provide the working environment and tools that they're used to in their everyday life. If they have to sit down with some old school tech, they're not going to enjoy their job very much. You want to give them the best tools in their hands to be able to do this. We are just about out of time, folks. I just want to wrap up by saying that we started off this with a goal of trying to get to the bottom of how do we fit all this together to accelerate to the next level of digital wealth management. And I think what we're hearing is that to do that very basic job within wealth management, which is to help people preserve and grow their wealth, that it takes all kinds and it takes all different types of tools that we can use, whether that be digital or human, and getting to know your customers in the best way that you can, depending upon the comfort level of that customer with engaging with you in different ways. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining today, and especially the crowd, and coming with us on this journey. And I'd also like to thank Rory Galvin and Carrie Ryan from Naviran and from Salesforce, respectively, and Christian from Pattern and Joe from BlackRock for coming on to this show with us today and sharing your insights so fluently. Really appreciate it.
Just before we close out, Pete, just keep an eye out for the next Finsight event, which will be coming up sometime late winter, early spring. So just thanks to everybody for showing up today.
Absolutely. And yes, indeed. Thank you for mentioning that, Rory. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night, wherever you may be. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
That does it for this week, folks. Links to get in touch with Rory Galvin from Naviran, Carrie Ryan from Salesforce, Christian Maynard Phillip from Pattern, and Joe Parkin from BlackRock are in the show notes on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie. So check us out online and subscribe to our Money Never Sleeps newsletter as well. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early stage startup investor and advisor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3. If you'd like to talk to me about your business, drop me a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya.
Money never sleeps, pal.